My wife's best friend, Tiffany Miller, is the queen of frenemies. She's constantly whispering in my wife, Chloe's ear. Your husband is always out schmoozing with clients. Not like my Mark. He's such a simple, reliable guy. He only has eyes for me. After hearing this, Chloe would come home and pick a fight with me, turning our house into a war zone. In my last life, this is how she broke us. Tiffany's constant provocations led to my divorce, the bankruptcy of my company, and my own ruin. Reborn, I watched Tiffany at the dinner table, oozing her usual passive aggression, and said nothing. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick message to her simple, reliable husband. Hey man, VIP lounge, top shelf models, the works. You in? 3 seconds later, he replied with I sent him a location of an exclusive downtown club. Your wife says you're losing your edge. Tonight, I'm helping you prove you've still got it. Half an hour later, I saw the look in his eyes as he walked into the private suite. The gilded door of the suite swung open, and Mark Preston peeked in. His plaid button-down was faded from countless washes, paired with a pair of wrinkled khakis. The man radiated a timid, small-town cheapness. Ethan, what is all this? He asked, nervously wringing his hands. I pointed to the leather sofa across from me. Sit. He perched on the very edge of the cushion, his back ramrod straight. I slid the drink menu over to him. Order. Mark flinched like he'd been burned, waving his hands frantically. No, Ethan, this is too expensive. I ignored him and gestured to the manager hovering by the door. Bring us your most expensive package. The manager bowed and slipped out. Mark's face went pale, his lips trembling. Ethan, we can't. If Tiff finds out, she'll kill me. I poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to him. She praises you for being a nice guy. Mark blinked. She tells my wife you're simple and reliable, that you only have eyes for her, I said, my voice flat as I took a sip. Mark, do you know what a woman really means when she calls you a nice guy? He stared at me, clueless. It means you're a doormat. Those words hit him like a punch to the gut. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the glass, his body starting to tremble. Soon, a parade of stunning women filed into the suite. Mark looked like he'd seen a ghost, shrinking into the corner of the sofa, not even daring to look up. I waved a hand, and the most beautiful of the group glided over to sit next to him. Hey, handsome, can I get you a drink? The woman purred, her voice sweet and soft. Mark's face flushed crimson all the way to his neck. He was so flustered he couldn't even form a sentence. I took out my phone, started recording, and discreetly aimed it at him. Fueled by the alcohol and the intoxicating atmosphere, the defenses of Mark the nice guy Preston began to crumble, 1 inch at a time. He went from dodging their advances to tentatively accepting a few drinks, which emboldened him. He started chatting with the woman beside him, still stuttering, but making an effort. A little later, he was learning to play dice, laughing whether he won or lost. Finally, he was standing on the coffee table with an arm around 2 women, his face flushed, screaming the off-key lyrics to Bon Jovi's Livin' on a Prayer. I put my phone away. I had enough footage. A few hours and several drinks later, Mark was clutching a bottle of whiskey and sobbing. He cried like a baby, snot and tears streaming down his face. Ethan, I'm so damn miserable. I make $150,000 a year, and she says it's not enough. She makes $40,000 and drops $5,000 on a purse. If I say anything, she tells me I'm not ambitious, that I can't give her the good life. Her best friend's husband. That's you, Ethan. You make real money, so you're a great man. But because I don't make as much, I'm a fucking loser. And in bed. He choked, unable to continue. She says I'm no good, that I'm useless. She just lies there like a dead fish, this cold look on her face. I'm a man, damn it. He slammed the bottle on the table, sending shards of glass flying. Just then his phone rang. The word wifey on the screen sobered him up instantly. He looked at me in a panic, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I took the phone, answered it, and put it on speaker. Tiffany's shrill voice immediately pierced the air. Mark, where the hell are you? Why aren't you home yet? Mark jumped, his lips turning white with fear. I mouthed 2 words to him, closing. Deal. Mark stammered. I'm with Ethan Vance. We're closing a deal. A deal? What kind of deal takes this long? You're just a low-level programmer. What kind of deal could you possibly be closing? Tiffany's tone was dripping with contempt. I mouthed another phrase. Multi-million-dollar. Mark straightened his neck and yelled. A multi-million-dollar deal. What the hell would you know about it? Silence on the other end. It was the first time Mark had ever yelled at Tiffany. He looked stunned by his own outburst. I gave him a thumbs up. He hung up the phone looking like he just won a major battle and immediately took another huge swig of whiskey. Later that night, I was hauling a dead drunk Mark home. As we pulled up to his apartment building, I saw two figures standing under a streetlight. My wife, Chloe Sullivan, and her best friend, Tiffany Miller. The moment Tiffany saw us, she charged over and jabbed a finger in my face. "Ethan Vance, what is wrong with you? Where did you take my husband to fool around?" Chloe was frowning too, her face a mask of disapproval. "Ethan, how could you take Mark to a place like that to drink? Look at him, he's a mess." I shoved Mark against a nearby tree, where he slumped over. I turned to Tiffany and smirked. "I'm teaching Mark how to get rich, unlike some people who just keep their husbands caged at home like a pet." My words left Tiffany speechless, but Chloe got angry, grabbing my arm. "Stop talking nonsense. Mark is such a good guy. Don't you dare corrupt him." I shook her hand off, not bothering to argue with her for the first time. I just looked at her calmly and asked word by word, "Do you think he's a good guy, or do you think he's a loser?" Chloe was stunned. A flicker of shock and guilt crossed her face. I didn't look at her again. I just turned and walked away. Behind me, I could hear Tiffany's furious curses, enraged by Mark's first act of rebellion, and Chloe's lost, confused silence. My heart was a block of ice. The next morning, I called Mark directly. "You awake? I'm downstairs. Let's get you some new clothes." Mark's voice was hoarse from the hangover, but laced with excitement. "Ethan, I'll be right down." I drove him straight to the most high-end shopping district in downtown Chicago. He stared at the designer logos, his palms sweating. "Ethan, I can't afford anything here." "You're not buying?" "I am." I pulled him into a luxury men's boutique. From suits and shirts to leather shoes and watches, I had the sales associate give him a complete head-to-toe makeover. When Mark walked out of the dressing room in a perfectly tailored Armani suit and a Patek Philippe on his wrist, he froze, staring at his reflection. The man in the mirror was poised and distinguished, without a trace of the plaid shirt programmer from the day before. The sales associate's eyes went wide. "Sir, with your build and charisma, you were born to wear these clothes." Mark blushed, but he stood up even straighter. I swiped my card. 6 figures. Mark saw the receipt and sucked in a sharp breath. I tucked my secondary card into the inner pocket of his new suit jacket. "Pin, is your birthday. When you're out in the world, your appearance is your reputation. Money is only worth something when you spend it." He tried to refuse again. I put a hand on his shoulder. "I'll handle your wife. Think of this as an investment." I took the new and improved Mark Preston to the most expensive French restaurant in the city. I had us take a picture together, both of us in sharp suits against the glittering backdrop of the city skyline. I posted it on my Instagram, visible only to Chloe and Tiffany, with the caption, "To good friends and new fortunes." Less than 3 minutes later, Chloe's call came through. "Ethan, are you out of your mind? You bought Mark all those expensive clothes? Where did you get the money to waste like that?" Her voice was shrill with accusation. I held the phone away from my ear until she was done screaming. "I'm making an investment." "An investment? What investment? You're just teaching him bad habits." "Chloe, is a man's self-respect worth a few $100,000? I hung up. She didn't get it. In the last life, she didn't get it either. All she knew was what Tiffany told her, that a good man should be frugal and hand over all his money to his wife. We were in the middle of our foie gras when an unwelcome figure stormed up to our table. Tiffany. She had clearly seen the bank alerts and tracked us down. She snatched the plate from in front of Mark and smashed it on the floor. "Mark Preston, you've grown a backbone, have you? How dare you spend this much money behind my back?" Every head in the restaurant turned to look. Mark's face instantly flushed beet red, and his first instinct was to bow his head and apologize. It was a habit honed over many years. I cleared my throat softly. He snapped his head up, remembering the words I'd coached him on the night before. For the first time, he didn't back down. He looked Tiffany straight in the eye. "Aren't you always saying I have no ambition, that I can't make real money?" His voice wasn't loud, but it was crystal clear. "Mister, Vance says that how you spend money determines how you make money. How can anyone trust a man to close a major deal if he doesn't even look the part?" Tiffany was trembling with rage. You've learned to talk back to me? What kind of poison has Ethan Vance been feeding you?" She tried to pull Chloe, who had been following behind her, into the fight for support. But this time, Chloe didn't immediately jump to her defense. She was looking at the confident, poised, almost unrecognizable Mark, then at me, sitting calmly as if I controlled the entire world. For the first time, a flicker of doubt appeared in her eyes. I wiped my mouth with my napkin and slowly stood up. I took a checkbook from my pocket, signed my name, and handed it to the restaurant manager. "My apologies for disturbing everyone's dinner. Put this table on my account." Then, I clapped Mark on the shoulder. "Let's go. I want you to meet my lawyer. We need to draw up the equity agreement for the new company." The word equity hit Tiffany and Chloe like a thunderclap. They were completely stunned. Tiffany, especially, underwent a rapid transformation at the sound of that word. Her anger shifted to suspicion, and finally, to a sliver of unconcealable greed. I led Mark past them without a backward glance. The fish I knew was starting to bite. I hadn't actually registered a company. I rented a small office space in the most prestigious building in downtown Chicago. A 1-month lease. I had a plaque made for the front desk, Orasync Technologies, to make it look official. Then I hired a group of temporary actors, a receptionist, a few employees, and a couple of guys who looked like elite executives. I appointed Mark as the project director. I gave him a meticulously fabricated business plan, filled with all the right buzzwords: artificial intelligence, blockchain, the metaverse. Reading it, even I wanted to invest. Mark clutched the plan like it was a holy grail. He came to work every day in a suit and tie, had his own private office, and subordinates who treated him with fawning respect. He started learning how to lead meetings, how to make decisions, how to command a room. He was completely intoxicated by this newfound sense of power. As expected, Tiffany couldn't sit still. She secretly followed Mark to the office building. When she tried to go inside, the receptionist I'd hired stopped her. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment? I'm looking for Mark Preston. I'm his wife," Tiffany said, indignant. The receptionist maintained a professional smile. "I'm sorry, but no one is allowed in without an appointment. Director Preston is in a very important meeting right now." Blocked by a receptionist, Tiffany stood fuming in the lobby, her face turning green with frustration. Unable to get in, she went running to Chloe to complain. "Chloe, I'm telling you, Ethan is up to something. What does Mark know about high-tech? He's just a coder. They're definitely working together to trick me. That company has to be fake." Worn down by Tiffany's whining, Chloe had no choice but to come to me. She approached me cautiously, her voice testing the waters. "Ethan, what exactly does your and Mark's company do?" I was reviewing some documents and didn't even look up. I pulled the fake business plan from a drawer and tossed it to her. "You can let Tiffany show this to her father. Let a man who's been in business his whole life tell you whether this project is worth anything or not." Tiffany's father, Mr. Miller, was someone I remembered well from my past life. A greedy, foolish, half-baked businessman with ambitions far beyond his abilities. In my last life, he was the one who listened to bad advice, made a disastrous investment, and ended up bankrupting their family. Sure enough, Tiffany took the business plan to her dad. Mr. Miller stared at the pages filled with technical jargon and glowing projections of a multi-billion-dollar market. He didn't understand a word of it, but he was deeply impressed. He stroked his chin, thought for a long moment, and actually started to believe it. "This project, it looks very promising. If they can really pull this off, it'll be huge." Tiffany was still skeptical. She decided to investigate herself. The next day, she stormed into the Orasync Technologies office. I was prepared. When she burst in, I was in the conference room with Mark and a veteran character actor I'd hired, at great expense, to play a seasoned investor. "Mr. Sterling, our initial market research on this project has been incredibly thorough. The technological barrier to entry is high, and once we launch, it will be an absolute game-changer," I declared with theatrical passion. Mark stood beside me, pointing a laser at the PowerPoint presentation, adding technical details with practiced ease. The old actor, our investor, nodded frequently, a look of approval on his face. "Excellent, excellent. Mr. Vance, you have the vision, and Director Preston has the technical expertise. I have great confidence in this project." He pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses. "Tell you what, I'm prepared to invest an initial $3 million as an angel round." $3 million. Tiffany froze in the doorway, utterly dumbfounded. She stared at the man at the conference table, impeccably dressed, speaking eloquently, looking every bit the high-powered executive, and her mind went blank. Was that really her husband? The same timid man she could order around at will? The meeting concluded successfully. I saw our investor out and turned to find Tiffany still standing there. Mark saw her too, his brow furrowing in clear annoyance at her uninvited appearance. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone laced with impatience and the authority of his new position. Tiffany's attitude did a complete 180. Her face broke into a wide smile as she scurried over to affectionately link her arm with Mark's. "Honey, I just missed you. I wanted to come see you." She even took it upon herself to straighten his tie, her voice sickeningly sweet. "You're working so hard. I made you some soup. You can have it when you get home tonight, okay?" Mark basked in her unprecedented attention, his ego swelling. He cleared his throat and nodded. "Fine. I have another meeting soon, so you should go home first." Like a schoolgirl praised by her teacher, Tiffany nodded obediently. "Okay, honey, you get back to work. I'll wait for you at home." I stood off to the side, a silent, cold observer of this ridiculous performance. Greed, I thought, was truly the best catalyst for human nature. Tiffany's fawning act only lasted a few days. She quickly realized that even though Mark was now a director, he still didn't have much money. He was becoming harder to control and had even started staying out all night. Her insecurity and need for control made her turn her sights back on me. She figured if she could take me down, Mark would revert to being her obedient lapdog. One weekend, I was meeting with an important female client at a coffee shop. Tiffany appeared out of nowhere and secretly snapped a photo. The angle was deliberately misleading. In the picture, the client was leaning forward as if sharing a secret, and I was leaning in to listen, making us look incredibly intimate. She immediately sent the photo to Chloe. "Chloe, look, I told you Ethan was no good. He's using your shared marital assets to cheat on you with other women. Look at her, dressed like such a tramp. You could just tell she's trashy." Chloe's call reached me while I was driving. Her voice was trembling with suppressed rage. "Ethan, where are you right now?" "Out. Who are you with?" "A client. Man or woman?" "Woman." The other end of the line went dead silent. Then came Chloe's hysterical scream. "Ethan, you bastard." When I got home, the living room was destroyed. Everything on the coffee table had been swept to the floor, and a vase was shattered in a million pieces. Chloe was sitting on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen, looking like a furious lioness. The moment she saw me, she launched herself at me, punching and kicking. "Why did you go see that slut? Don't you love me anymore? Do you want a divorce? Is that it?" The scene was identical to my last life. Then, I was defenseless, desperately trying to explain while she screamed hysterically, not hearing a word. Our love had been ground down to nothing by these endless cycles of suspicion and fighting. This time, I didn't move. I let her fists rain down on me. It didn't hurt. It just felt cold. When she was tired of hitting and crying, I asked calmly, "Are you done?" She froze, staring at me in shock. I didn't explain the photo. I took out my phone, pulled up a video, and placed it on the coffee table in front of her. "Watch this." The video showed the neon-lit, decadent private suite of the club. Mark, the man Tiffany called simple and reliable, was in the center of it all, a woman on each arm, his face flushed with excitement. He held a glass high in the air, shouting at the camera, "I'm free." The sound was perfectly clear. Chloe's sobs stopped abruptly. She stared in disbelief at the wild, unrestrained man in the video, her eyes filled with shock and confusion. Was that really Mark? The same Mark who would blush just talking to her, who always spoke in a soft, gentle voice? I put my phone away, my voice devoid of any warmth. "That is the nice guy Tiffany is always talking about. Chloe, you have two choices right now. One, you believe her. We go to the courthouse right now and file for divorce. Two, you believe me. And then you go ask your best friend if she has any idea who her husband really is." I picked up my jacket from the entryway. As she watched, broken and confused, I opened the door and walked out without looking back. The door slammed shut behind me with a heavy thud, as if shattering everything she had ever believed. "It's your move, Chloe. This time, I won't be giving you any explanations." Chloe didn't sleep that night. The next day, with eyes swollen like walnuts, she marched straight to Tiffany's apartment. I didn't go with her, but I could imagine the scene. At first, Tiffany would have denied everything. "Chloe, are you crazy? You'd rather believe that liar Ethan than me? That video is obviously photoshopped. Ethan edited it to frame him." But the version Chloe showed her was the complete, unedited footage I had compiled. It included Mark's drunken confessions, his resentment toward Tiffany, and that long-suppressed roar of frustration during the phone call. The evidence was undeniable. In that moment, Chloe's entire world collapsed. She tearfully confronted Tiffany. "Tiff, why did you lie to me? Have you always looked down on Ethan? Did you want us to be miserable? We were supposed to be best friends." The two women, over a man and a lie, finally tore each other apart. They had a massive fight and went their separate ways. That evening, Chloe came home. I wasn't there. For the first time, she cooked a full meal herself, a table laden with all my favorite dishes. The food had long gone cold by the time I returned from the office. She stood before me like a child who had done something wrong, speaking cautiously. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. I shouldn't have listened to Tiffany." I looked at the table full of food, my heart feeling nothing. I sat down, picked up my chopsticks, and took a single bite of each dish. "The food's not bad," I said. A glimmer of hope lit up in Chloe's eyes. "But trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, it's broken." I put down my chopsticks and stood up. "Don't do this again. I won't be coming home for dinner." The light in her eyes died. From that day on, I used the excuse of being busy with a project and frequently stayed away from home. The house became Chloe's solitary confinement. She started sending me a relentless stream of messages and calls. Honey, when are you coming home? I made dinner. Won't you come back and have a bite? I miss you. Every message was a reflection of how I had been in my past life, pathetic and desperate. I rarely replied. When I did, it was a curt biz, or in a meeting. The tables had turned. She started waiting for me outside my office building. One day it was pouring rain. She didn't have an umbrella and just stood there in the downpour from morning until night. I watched from my office window as her frail body shivered in the wind and rain, like a single leaf about to be torn away. I felt no pity. In my last life, after my bankruptcy, I had waited outside her apartment just like that, begging her to see me one last time. She never even opened her curtains. I had my assistant take an umbrella down to her, then I left through the underground parking garage. She waited at her front door until late into the night. When she saw my car pull up, she rushed forward, trying to hug me. I sidestepped her, and she stumbled, nearly falling. I looked at her pale, worn-out face and her swollen, red-rimmed eyes. Get some sleep, I said, walking past her to open the door. Don't wait up for me. The door closed behind me, shutting out the sound of her suppressed sobs. Chloe, this is only the beginning. The despair I once endured, I will make you taste every last drop of it, doubled. Mark's ambition had been thoroughly ignited by me, but he still needed one final catalyst, money, a significant sum that was truly his own. I called him into my office. Mark, our Orasync Technologies is ready to go. We just need one last push. He looked at me eagerly. Ethan, what kind of push? Cash. I tossed the forged $3 million letter of intent, signed by our investor, onto his desk. Mr. Sterling's investment comes with a condition. We need to show at least $500,000 in startup capital to prove our commitment and viability. Once that money is in the account, the $3 million will be wired immediately. Mark's breathing quickened. $500,000. Ethan, where am I going to get that kind of money? I poured him a cup of tea, speaking slowly. Didn't you say your wife's family was about to get a big payout from that property demolition? I clapped him on the shoulder, my tone heavy with suggestion. Mark, this is your one and only shot. Seize it, and you'll turn your life around. You'll be able to stand up to your wife, your father-in-law, everyone who's ever looked down on you. Fail, and you'll go back to being that loser, making $150,000 a year, getting called useless by your wife. I could see the struggle in Mark's eyes, the hesitation. But in the end, it was completely consumed by greed and ambition. He had tasted power and respect, and there was no going back. He went home on his own accord. By this point, Tiffany's friendship with Chloe had shattered, leaving her isolated. Mark, her future meal ticket, was her only lifeline. Mark gave her an embellished version of the project's prospects and the $3 million investment. He told Tiffany that if they just invested $500,000, it would soon become $3.5 million. Then she could buy more than just a designer bag. She could buy the whole damn store. Tiffany was sold. She immediately went to work on her equally greedy father. Mr. Miller was hesitant at first. It was his retirement savings. But he couldn't resist his daughter's persuasion and the prospect of his son-in-law finally making it big. He gritted his teeth, withdrew his life savings, and added the entire demolition payout, a total of $500,000, and handed it all to Mark. The moment the money hit the account, I had Mark transfer it to a new, clean account I had prepared. Then, right in front of him, I transferred $100,000 from that $500,000 directly into his personal account. Ping! Mark's phone lit up with a bank notification. He opened it with trembling hands. As he stared at the long string of zeros, his eyes changed completely. They now held the predatory glint of a man corrupted by money and desire. Ethan, his voice was hoarse. I handed him a glass of red wine. From today on, you're not the pushover Mark Preston anymore. You are Director Preston. He drained the glass in one gulp. From that day forward, Mark began obsessively studying finance, researching capital management, and even reading the prints. Some of the schemes he proposed to me were even more ruthless than my own. I knew then that the beast I had created was ready to be unleashed. Meanwhile, Tiffany and her father were still at home, dreaming of their impending fortune. They had no idea they had just stepped off a cliff into an abyss. A month passed. The Millers didn't receive any dividends, only a late payment notice from the bank. Mr. Miller started to panic. He called Mark, but the phone was turned off. He rushed to the Orasync Technologies office address, where the building management informed him the company had terminated its lease a week ago. The office was empty. Mr. Miller finally realized that his $500,000 was gone. The world went black, and he collapsed from a stroke in the glittering lobby of the office building. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was unconscious. The ICU's critical condition notice was a death sentence slapped in Tiffany's face. She fell apart. She frantically searched for Mark, calling everyone she knew. Finally, following a hint I provided, she cornered him in a suite at a 5-star hotel. The moment she pushed the door open, she froze. Mark was wearing a silk robe, sipping red wine and laughing with a beautiful young woman. Tiffany recognized her. She was the top girl from the club. Seeing Tiffany, Mark showed no sign of panic. He didn't even lift his gaze, just glanced at her coldly, as if she were a complete stranger. Tiffany lunged at him, tearing at him like a mad woman. "Mark, you liar. Give me back my money. My father is in the hospital. He needs it to live." The girl beside Mark screamed in terror. He shoved Tiffany away impatiently, and she fell to the floor in a heap. He looked down at her, a cruel sneer on his face. "Give you back the money? Tiffany, what about the emotional damages for all the years you manipulated and belittled me? What about the depreciation for all the times you called me useless, treated me like your workhorse?" He pulled a stack of papers from a drawer and threw them in her face. It was the video I had recorded. It was records of all the money he had transferred to her for designer bags over the years. A thick stack. "You were the one who told me a man couldn't be too nice, that he needed ambition, that he had to make big money. Well, now I have." His voice was ice. "Are you satisfied?" Tiffany sat paralyzed on the floor, staring at this completely unrecognizable man, unable to speak a single word. Family, love, money. Everything she had ever taken pride in had turned to ash overnight. Mark didn't give her another look. He put his arm around his new companion, picked up his passport and the remaining cash, and walked out. At the airport, he sent me one last text. "Ethan, thanks. It's a big world out there. See you around." I deleted the message. My work was done. Tiffany's fate was sealed the moment she decided to play her manipulative games. Chloe heard about the Miller's disaster from a mutual friend. Mr. Miller was paralyzed from the stroke. Tiffany was saddled with massive debt, and collectors were harassing her at home, making her afraid to even open her door. Mark had vanished with the money. Chloe immediately knew I was involved. She stormed into my office, her eyes red with fury. "Ethan, did you do this? Were you behind what happened to Tiffany's family?" Her voice trembled with a mixture of anger and fear. I was signing a contract. My pen paused for a fraction of a second. I looked up, meeting her gaze calmly. I didn't deny it. Yes, my admission was so blunt it left Chloe momentarily speechless. "I gave Mark a choice, and he gave Tiffany a choice," I said calmly. "They both chose the thing they wanted most. That's all." I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the traffic below. "Chloe, do you want to know why I did it?" I turned back to her and recounted the entire plan. Then, I told her everything that had happened in my past life. I told her how, under Tiffany's influence, she had argued with me, suspected me, time and time again. I told her how we had divorced. I told her how my company had been destroyed by our competitors, with her and Tiffany's help from the inside. Finally, I told her how, on a rainy night, I had jumped from the roof of this very building. The color drained from Chloe's face as she listened, her body trembling violently. She stumbled backward until she hit the wall and could no longer stand, sliding slowly to the floor. So, all my hatred had a source. So, she was the one who had personally pushed me into the abyss. "No, that's not true. I didn't," she cried, her words a jumbled mess. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I really didn't know. I was just blinded by her." She crawled toward me, trying to grab my leg and beg for forgiveness. I took a step back. From my desk drawer, I pulled out a document and placed it in front of her. It was a divorce agreement. I had already signed it. "In our last life, you were the one who filed for divorce. Right after you and Tiffany tricked me out of my company's last bit of liquidity. This time, it's my turn." I held out a pen to her. "Chloe, I gave you a chance. The moment I showed you that video of Mark, the moment you accused me of cheating, if you had chosen, firmly and without hesitation, to believe me, to stand by my side, maybe there would still be a chance for us. But you didn't." Her tears, like broken strings of pearls, fell onto the divorce papers, blurring my signature. "Sign it," I said, my voice utterly devoid of emotion. "We're even." Chloe didn't sign it. Instead, right in front of me, she tore the agreement to shreds. "No, I won't sign it. Ethan, I will never agree to a divorce," she screamed, like a helpless child. I ignored her and called security to have her escorted out. I moved into my office. She remained in that empty house we once called home, and she began her penance. She learned to manage the household, keeping the house spotless. She studied my preferences cooking different meals every day and bringing them in insulated containers to the lobby of my office building. Wind or rain, she never missed a day. I never once went down to get the food. The receptionists and security guards all came to know her, their eyes filled with pity. She went to my parents for help. They sighed and told her, "Chloe, what you two did back then was too much. You broke Ethan's heart." When her own parents and friends learned the full story, they all called me cold-blooded and ruthless. So she was tricked by her best friend. Is that a reason to be so vengeful? Ethan's rich now, so he's just dumping you. What a terrible man. For the first time, Chloe stood against everyone to defend me. She cut ties with the friends who criticized me and stopped speaking to her own parents who blamed me. She started studying my company's business, borrowing thick stacks of books on corporate management and finance from the library. She took detailed notes, wanting to help me, to find a way into my world. She would leave the notebooks at the front desk, and I would have my assistant return them, untouched. Once, I was out late entertaining clients and had too much to drink. As my assistant helped me out of the hotel, I saw her car parked across the street. She immediately got out and rushed over, trying to support me. I pushed her away and leaned on my assistant instead. Her outstretched hands froze in midair. It rained hard that night. She stood in it outside my office building all night long. When I came down the next morning, she was soaked to the bone, her lips purple from the cold. Seeing me, she only managed a hoarse, "I'm sorry." I rolled up my window. The car sped past her, splashing water all over her. In the rearview mirror, I saw her slender frame finally give out as she collapsed to the pavement. A sharp pain lanced through my heart, but it was quickly drowned out by the memory of weightlessness and despair as I fell in my last life. It's not enough, Chloe. It's nowhere near enough. Later, I heard she sold all the designer bags and jewelry Tiffany had ever given her, pieces she had once cherished. With that money, she started a small charitable foundation. It provided legal and psychological support for people who had suffered mental abuse and manipulation in their relationships. I saw all of this through my assistant's reports, but it never responded. The wounds from my past life were too deep to be healed by a few meals and a few apologies. Tiffany's life grew harder by the day. Her father's medical bills were a bottomless pit, and the debt collector's calls and harassment pushed her to the brink of a mental breakdown. She reached out to every friend she could think of for a loan, but they all avoided her like the plague. Finally, she thought of Chloe. She found Chloe's new, smaller apartment. In just a few months, Tiffany had aged 10 years. She was wearing cheap, worn-out clothes, her hair was dull and lifeless, and her face had the numb expression of someone beaten down by life. The moment she saw Chloe, she dropped her knees. "Chloe, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong," she sobbed, clutching Chloe's legs. "Please, for the sake of our years of friendship, talk to Ethan. Ask him to let me go. My dad is dying. I'm begging you." Chloe looked down at her, her gaze no longer filled with blind trust, but with a complex mixture of pity and calm. She tried to help Tiffany up, but Tiffany clung to her desperately. When she saw Chloe wasn't budging, Tiffany's expression turned ugly. She started making threats. "Chloe, if you don't help me, I'll tell everyone everything. I'll go to the media and tell them how Ethan set up a scam to steal my father's money, how he forced my husband to leave. I'll ruin him. None of you will get a happy ending." Chloe slowly pulled her leg free and stood up straight. She took a wad of cash from her wallet and placed it on the floor in front of Tiffany. "This is the last thing I can do for you as a friend." Her voice was soft but firm. "I will anonymously help pay your father's medical bills. But this is a loan. You will pay it back one day. As for Ethan, I will not interfere in his affairs. And I will certainly not use the same tactics he used on me to demand he do anything." Tiffany was stunned. She never imagined that Chloe, who had always bent to her will, would say such a thing. She started screaming obscenities, a torrent of vile, filthy language. Chloe ignored her. She simply took out her phone and calmly dialed 911. "Hello, police. There's someone here causing a public disturbance." The entire scene was recorded on a cell phone by the bodyguard I had assigned to protect Chloe. I sat in my office, watching the video. I saw Chloe's back, resolute and unfamiliar, as she stood firm against Tiffany's tantrum. And the 1,000-year-old glacier around my heart seemed to crack, just a little. I sent Chloe a message, the first I had initiated. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., our old spot." It took a long time for a reply to come. A single word. "Okay," but I knew she must have cried. Our old spot was the steakhouse where we had our first date. Chloe arrived an hour early. She wore light makeup and a white dress I had once told her I liked. She sat there nervously, like a candidate waiting for a job interview. I arrived on time. She immediately shot to her feet, flustered. Ethan, I nodded for her to sit down. We ate mostly in silence. Neither of us brought up the past. After dinner, I didn't leave right away as I usually did. I took a file out of my briefcase. When Chloe saw it, her face went deathly pale. She thought it was another divorce agreement. I pushed it across the table to her. Read it. With trembling hands, she opened it to the first page. The title read, Probationary Relationship Contract. She stared at it, confused. The contract detailed the rights and responsibilities of Party A, Ethan Vance, and Party B, Chloe Sullivan. Clauses included. Both parties must maintain absolute trust, communicating immediately when issues arise, and prohibiting any form of suspicion or testing. Both parties must have their own independent careers and social circles, respecting each other's personal space. Party B is required to learn at least 3 new life skills and independently manage 1 charitable project to completion. Party A is obligated to spend a minimum of 8 hours of quality time with Party B per week. The probationary period was 1 year. After a year, Party A reserved the right to decide whether to make the relationship permanent based on Party B's performance. Chloe read it page by page, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked up, her red eyes filled with a mix of confusion and a tiny, fragile sliver of hope. Ethan, what? What does this mean? I looked at her. I got my revenge on Tiffany, and I punished you. Now I want to give myself a chance and give you a chance. I paused, my voice softening. But, Chloe, we can't go back. The Ethan and Chloe from our last life. They're both dead. All we can do is start over. I pushed the pen across the table to her. Are you willing? Through her tears, she nodded with all the strength she could muster. On the signature line for Party B, she carefully wrote out her name. I reached out and took her hand. It was a light touch, but it was no longer cold. 1 year later, the relationship contract probationary period was over. In that year, Chloe had truly changed. She was no longer the dependent vine, clinging to her best friend and her husband. She had her own career. That small charitable foundation, under her management, had already helped hundreds of families and was gaining a reputation in its field. She had become independent, confident, and decisive. It was like we were falling in love all over again. There was no suspicion, no fighting, only an equal respect and a clumsy, tentative effort to grow closer. I took her to visit the grave I would have had in my past life. She stood before the cold, empty plot of land and cried uncontrollably. I'm sorry, and thank you for coming back. We held a small wedding on the beach with only our closest friends and family. During the ceremony, an unexpected guest appeared. Mark. He had returned from overseas. He was wearing a well-tailored bespoke suit and carried himself with a quiet confidence, bearing no resemblance to the man he once was. I'd heard he'd used the money as seed capital to invest in the tech industry in Southeast Asia and was now a wealthy, respected businessman in his own right. He came over to me, holding a glass of champagne. Ethan, he gave me a deep, formal bow. I wouldn't be who I am today without you. That $500,000, I paid Tiffany's mother back tenfold. The money isn't important, I said. What's important is that you taught me how to live like a man. I clinked my glass against his and smiled. You were the one who chose your path. No one mentioned Tiffany's name. I heard she had taken the money Mark repaid, moved with her mother to a different city, and disappeared. During the vows, Chloe looked at me, her eyes shining. She said, Ethan, in the last life, you protected me. In this one, it's my turn to protect you. I kissed her. The sun was bright. The ocean breeze was gentle. I knew, this time, we would both find our happiness. A true new beginning.